So the Brexit talks finally started this week. Are you more confident about the future for EU migrants in this country?
I feel ashamed that our government hasn't dealt with it already. I mean, millions of EU citizens have come to this country not just to contribute to our communities, but actually to be part of our communities. And we push the government time and again to unilaterally guarantee their rights. They've failed to do so. I genuinely hope that this can now be sorted out very, very quickly, and we'll be pressing on it in Parliament.
But could you say something about what you feel is the contribution of EU migrants, what has been a contribution of EU migrants to public services in this country over the years?
Well, many EU citizens have come here to work in all sorts of different sectors, but particularly in the public sector. And we all know that we absolutely rely on them. And I think we need to send a message to them at this time about how welcome they are, how we value their contribution, and we'll fight and fight to make sure their rights are fully protected.
A couple of think tanks this week published reports saying that if there were no EU migrants in the future, public services would just fall apart.
Well, we've got to have sensible rules about migration from the EU. Our economy needs people to come here and to be part of our society. So we need immigration rules that are fair, that work for the economy and work for our communities. But we should never cease to be an open, outward-looking nation that welcomes people from around the world.
So it's not just about the rights of existing EU migrants, it's this future freedom of movement to some extent.
I think the first thing is to protect the rights of people who are already here, who've made their homes here, whose families are here. And they're very anxious. All MPs have had families coming and in tears very often in their constituencies. So that's got to be done. It should have been done by now. And had Labour been elected at the last election, we'd have done it on day one. So we feel very passionately about this. In the future, we've got to be honest about what the needs are of our economy and of our public services. And we will need people to come here to work and to contribute and to play a fantastic part in the delivery of public services.
Also in your manifesto you had an alternative to the Great Repeal Bill.
Yeah.
Very much aimed at the economy and workers' rights. Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah. We, in our manifesto, set out an EU rights and protections bill. The point of that is to make sure that all the rights that people have at work now, amongst other things, are fully entrenched in our law. And I mean fully entrenched. I think what the Tories will do is to put in qualifications, limitations. There are already some of them talking about sunset clauses where the rights will fall away after a few years. We want to make sure they're fully entrenched. We want to do something else, which is really important, which is to make sure that as the years roll on, our workers' rights don't fall below the European standard. I think this is really important because what we don't want is the UK left behind when it comes to the rights of workers and those in any workplace.
And that is one of the great tragedies of Brexit, which is that the EU, through the EU, we'd negotiated all of these kind of watertight workers' rights.
Yeah, and we need to protect them. I mean, they can go into our law, they need to go into our law, but we need to make sure that we're pushing those standards up all the time. So one thing to protect what we've got. The second is how do we make sure those standards continue to rise? And that needs to be done here, but it's also part of the negotiation with the EU.
UNISON has been running our Public Services Champions campaign for some time. Ironically, we started it way before this kind of torrent of terrorist attacks, tragedies on, with the fire last week. I mean, do you kind of feel that more than ever we need and are beginning to realise the importance of public service workers?
Well, public service workers are on the front line and they deliver fantastically day in, day out. And over the last few months, tragically, they've been tested in really, really difficult circumstances. The first thing we need to say is a big thank you. The second is because I ran a public service for 5 years, I know that people operating and working in public services do it not just because it's a job, they do it because they want to serve the public, and they're undervalued and underpaid. And I think we now need to see the end of austerity. We need to invest in our public services, and we also need to value those working in our public services in a way that we haven't done up until now.